What happens when your ego gets in the way? And I mean literally gets in the way. So there's an interesting phenomena occurring with the work that I do. And this is a pattern that has been going on for probably a year and a half since I studied quantum healing hypnosis technique through Dolores Cannon. And now I have my own program. It's an Emprima program called the Biofield Training Program. And what I do is I step into people's biofield, the energy force, the energy that surrounds the body, and I can remote scan anyone, anywhere in the world, so long as I have 2 out of 3 votes. So mind, body, spirit, as long as I have 2 out of 3, I have a majority vote to enter into the system. So sometimes that majority vote is the body and the spirit, and the mind is still rejecting assistance. But we'll get to that another time. I'm reading The Body Keeps Its Score by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, and it is a phenomenal book for anyone that's experienced trauma. In this book, he breaks it down, and he has different definitions for different sort of roles that the mind plays. So we have firefighters that put out fires. Like, it doesn't matter what it is, even if it's something that the rest of the world might perceive as safe, it's a threat, put out the fire, right? And then there's managers who, if any of you have ever had toxic managers for bosses, this is what's going on in the mind. So if a toxic boss is having a threat come to it that somebody else, like i.e. me, as a metaphysician that focuses on the impact of emotions on body and life, I become a threat to that entity, the mind will then, as the managers of the mind, perceive the threat and try to eliminate the threat, which is kind of comical because I can see it in a sort of low dose way with certain people saying, oh, well, I just don't feel like it's the right time yet. And then a couple texts later, they'll say, well, I'm not feeling so good. And then a couple texts later, and they're not consciously aware of what they're texting. They're just texting because there's a conflict in the mind with the mind and the body and the spirit. And the other two want something that the mind is pushing back because there's a threat. So these things happen all the time. And I have to laugh because it'll happen usually the day before a deep dive program. So whether it's quantum healing hypnosis technique, which is a sleep kind of state, or the biofield program, which I designed, and can do pretty much the same thing in releasing emotions from the body and releasing trauma from a metaphysical or quantum perspective. So recently, within the past couple months, I've had clients that had such severe childhood trauma show up at my house where their ankles swelled to the size of my thighs. Like huge, huge. And it was the body being used by the mind to create barriers to push me, the metaphysician, away from coming into that fortress and removing the toxicity from the system energetically. So and it's not like it's an invasive thing that I do. It's mind scanning, going in and coding things and removing them from the coding. So when we look at that, the reaction of many people, and this is over a dozen people so far in the year and a half that would have a severe reaction. What happened today was I was supposed to work with someone who has palsy, and they were given a year to live, severe palsy. And it's massive amounts of trauma over a long period of time. The Ayurveda Samprapti, the story of how discomfort or irritation or something small over a long period of time becomes something very big. So this person that is experiencing the palsy had head swelling and a lot of fluid and had to go to the hospital last night to remove the swelling from the system. So the mind, even though they weren't aware of what I could do, they knew at the quantum telepathic level what I can do. And that's another topic of how the mind knows things before the mind knows things. I can send a signal to someone across the world who's never met me before. Maybe they participated in a Facebook group, and I can telepathically connect with them even though they're not consciously aware that they're having a conversation with me. that their system will share data back to me, even if they're atheist, physicist that doesn't believe in anything I say and everything I say is this quantum woo-woo thing. I can still communicate because the mind and the body and the spirit are three different voices. The spirit doesn't give a shit what the mind thinks. The spirit knows what science is capable of, even if the community hasn't evolved to be able to measure it in a way that physics understands, quantum physics understands. The science is still there. Our understanding of what is occurring isn't. So if the person has to live in a box, like here are the rules, this is predictable, these are the answers, that very mathematical quantum, the mathematical physics box of reality only exists if we can measure it and it's reliable and we can repeat the data, repeat the experience that create the same data over and over, right? Because that's what research and what science has said is don't question things we don't know. They don't exist until we can validate them with a math formula or theory. But communicating with humans is not measurable yet. We can do it. We don't know how we do it. So there's a portion of people who don't believe it exists at all because it cannot be validated beyond reasonable doubt in their face, irrefutably. But that doesn't change the way we behave because we still have to come back into psychology and neuroscience. So in working with me, clients tend to have very severe reactions the day before an appointment with me if they've had massive amounts of trauma in their life. So massive amounts, exposure to war. Not just exposure to war, but exposure to war where there was severe PTSD from traumatic events that, let's say, dismembered humans, or severe childhood molestation, or severe child trafficking or human trafficking, or severe domestic abuse to the point where the body and the mind broke. So when I work with people that have extreme trauma or tragic trauma, their system they'll either have severe vomiting the night before, severe swelling, where people's ankles swell up to the size of my thigh, massive headaches where they feel like they can't think and they can't drive to get to me, or other things that are a little less severe, but in an attempt to reschedule, right? The mind is trying to push back the invasion of the system, or so it's perceiving it to be. In chapter 17 of this book, it goes over the different roles that are played. So we've got managers in the system, and if I, the metaphysician, have the capacity to eliminate those managers or the need for the managers, they feel threatened. Just like in a corporation or in a company where you have really toxic managers and they feel like their job is being threatened, they will push out and paper trail people out that are superior in leadership to the manager. So the subordinates that are threatening the manager's position become the problem. They become the target, even though overall those individual employees are better for the culture of the company than that toxic manager, right? It's a self-defense mechanism, and the mind will do this to people. So we've got managers, and then we've got firefighters. Firefighters don't care what's happening. There's a fire, you put it out. It doesn't matter what the collateral damage is. It doesn't matter that being an alcoholic is completely destroying the family. The system will use alcohol to put out the fire. Problem arises, we need to put out the fire, drink. Problem arises, we use prescription drugs to put out that fire. They're not permanent solutions, but it's the way that the system is using the tools it has available for self-preservation. There's a line in this book, and it says, it requires an enormous amount of energy to keep the system under control. The system will do whatever the system can do to preserve itself, even if it is filled with toxicity that is literally diagnosed as cancer or literally diagnosed as palsy or diagnosed as something else that is very severe and chronic and life-threatening. The system will protect itself against everything, even if it is against itself, which is absolutely asinine, but that is how our brain works. Beautiful piece of equipment, But when there's a little glitch, that little glitch can cause avalanches in our lifespan. So he goes on to say, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk goes on to say, but each part should be approached as an internal protector who maintains an important defense position. It would be like if we had artificial intelligence to protect us, but the coding got wrong and they were now attacking us. So now the system is attacking itself. Then he talks about exiles, and this is the next page on page 291. He says, exiles are the toxic waste dump of the system. Because they hold the memories, sensations, beliefs, and emotions associated with trauma, it is hazardous to release them. Exiles may reveal themselves in the form of crushing physical sensation or extreme numbing. So it doesn't matter how the system, the data in the system is reporting. When I go into the system and I get that quantum report showing this emotion's causing this pain, this emotion's here, this emotion's in the body, this emotion is halting progress in this zone, this emotion from 40 years ago, this trauma is disrupting the nervous system. It doesn't matter. The exiles will reveal themselves in the form of crushing physical sensation or extreme numbing. And they offend both the reasonableness of the managers and the bravado of the firefighters. So now we've got 3 categories of responses that are still not serving the greatest good for the whole system. So this book, by the way, if you read it, you can tell I'm not even, maybe 2/3 of the way done. And I read it, I'm reading it to teach it. So the system will continue to do what it's been doing until something safe comes along. So it could be a therapist, and it may not be the therapist for a year after sessions. It may take a whole year of sessions going nowhere for the system to recognize that that's a safe place. And the irony here, and why I share this, is that when people come to my house and they sit down in my house, that is the moment when they feel safe. Getting to my house was the battle. When they come to see me the day of their appointment, it's really funny in an ironic way that once they're in my space, they feel fine. All those symptoms that were created the day before fade away. But getting there, they had to go through the gauntlet. Their system had to fight to get to me. But once it gets to me, it's like crossing the moat. It's now safe in the castle. And I can't explain it in other terms that are any better than the way this book is explaining it. But getting to the appointment is a little bit of a battle. But once the person gets to me, they're fine. The symptoms subside, they feel relaxed, they open up, we start releasing. But getting to that point, for people who have extreme trauma, there's going to be a little bit of a battle. But it's not about who wins the battle, it's about who wins the war inside. And getting to the appointment, then we can start peeling back those layers and letting the stuff go. And that's why almost every person I work with, whether it's quantum healing hypnosis technique or the biofield treatment program or the quantum coaching, all report the same word, that they feel lighter. Of course they're going to feel lighter because we've pulled all this invisible shit off of their body, and that invisible stuff carries weight. Emotions carry weight. They carry burdens. They carry shame. They carry guilt. They carry embarrassment and humiliation. We may not be able to physically see it, but it's a feeling we have, not something we can see or hear. We feel the weight it carries. That's where a lot of people's lower back pain comes from, or the injuries to the knees that really shouldn't have progressed the way they have. Like there was no car accident or jumping out of an airplane. And yet the knees, arthritis, fibromyalgia, neuropathy, where doctors just don't have an understanding of where those things come from. It's because emotions over time manifested into physical ailments, and the system took the quickest way to get to the broken link. So that broken chain, right? The weakest part of the chain is where the link is weak. Not the whole chain, that one singular link, and that's where all the emotions will target. Because that's the easiest battle for the emotions to fight, is go for the weakest link. And if the weakest link is the ankle or the knee or the nervous system or the head with headaches and migraines or the heart or the lungs with asthma, it will take that path to the weakest link and start residing in those places. And they will get so embedded in those places, whether it's in an organ or a joint, that it becomes a threat now because they have been squatting in that space for so long that they now have gained the rights to stay, according to the mind. They now can put up the no trespassing sign. You don't get to come in here and evict me. I've been squatting here for so long. I own this place. Like property issues, right? That's what we see. So if you have severe trauma, well, what I suggest you do is schedule an appointment with a therapist and go to your first EMDR session. So find a therapist that is specialized in eye movement desensitization and reprogramming. That's the dual hemisphere work. So it's not just stuck on one side of the brain. It's going to cause a dual hemisphere response to lift that trauma. So it's lifting the trauma out, and then I'm going to come in and we're going to wipe that trauma off the board. So the EMDR will bring it up, and the work with me will pull it out. Instead of me trying to chisel my way in, EMDR and the biofield program work hand in hand. So, and we can do this online, we can do this in person. It's easier in person for me, but it's safer for a lot of people to do it online. So if they have a lot of traumatic memories, that they're still in a private space that's theirs as we're moving through this. And the person on the other side of the screen assisting them through it, coaching them through it. But either way works if you want to do in person or online. They're both effective. They're just two different ways to get to the same destination. So I hope that helps. Kind of break it down and to say that if you do have extreme trauma, you probably are going to have some kind of a weird response the day before our appointment. That's okay. Just keep pushing through and let your mind know that you are safe, that this is safe. And it's non-invasive. I'm not coming in, obviously, through Zoom, right? I'm not going to come in with any tools to open the system. I'm just scanning and then bringing awareness to you for you to be able to help move that out and evict that energy off of the system. So kind of like a home organizer, but for energy. I hope that makes sense, and I hope that encourages you to let go of the trauma you're holding on to so that you can feel lighter.